I was born in Oxford, actually, but I was born during the war, so it was kind of like Oxford was where my mother and grandmother were evacuated from the Blitz. I grew up in London, and my connection with Ireland was twofold, really. Well, my grandfather was Irish on my mother's side, was born in Dublin. The piano behind me, the piano behind me belonged to my grandfather, and he was a musician, and he was in the British Army, and he was a bandsman in the army, and when he left the army, he became a band leader in a circus. He had this piano, which he'd had in London during the Blitz, and a bomb fell quite near the house and blew all the windows in to the house, and so the piano, front of the piano, is pockmarked with glass. There was music in my family in the sense that my mother played that piano. I remember her playing that piano. And my father played the violin. In the 1930s, he would have been in the Hungry 30s, growing. He was in London, and he would have been in a little dance band, a trio dance band, playing kind of popular stuff around for weddings and bar mitzvahs and things like that. Like a lot of young teenagers, I was into rock and roll, and Bill Haley and the Comets, Elvis Presley. Also, what was current at the time was a movement in music called skiffle, which was kind of homegrown music that you could play. You didn't need electric guitars for it. You could play it on anything, really. T-chest basses and guitars with 3 strings instead of 6, and anything you get your hands on, washboards, and a lot of the songs were from the blues tradition with Leadbelly and people like that in America. So we got interested in the blues as well, and jazz and everything that came with it, and that was my introduction to it. So we had a skiffle group. I used to go to the Ballads and Blues Club, which was in London, when I was about 15 or 16. I used to go with my older sister. And Ewan MacColl and Peggy Seeger were the residents there, but they always had guests on, and they always had people. Seamus Ennis. I'd never seen the Pipes or heard anything like it before. And another resident there for a while was Joe Heaney, the Shannon singer. So that was a kind of an introduction to a completely different thing from skiffle. And it was Ewan MacColl's influence that sort of got me interested in English folk song, Scottish folk song, and Irish folk song, and music, really. And Ewan MacColl sort of had this principle or this rule. He was very fond of rules, actually, but he had this rule that if you tried to sing songs from your own heritage rather than adopt somebody else's, because there's always people, Americans, who can sing American songs. Why not sing songs from your own background, from your own heritage? So that's what I was doing. I started to sing English folk songs, really, and Scottish folk songs and Irish songs. The critics group. The idea was if you try and achieve something in terms of folk song and folk music, that you should have a number of principles. One is that you should learn from the originators of that. In other words, people, the traditional singers that were still around at the time. Well, my early music career with Sandra Kerr was based on being in the critics group. We got together and we started singing songs together. And she was very good at harmony. She was a good musician. When we went out to do gigs, we'd have about 6 or 7 instruments in the boot of the car and lug them all into these folk clubs and do our thing, basically. Yeah, we sang a mixture of types of songs, traditional songs of all kinds, and newly written songs that would be a lot of which had been written by Ewan MacColl. We used to occasionally do Woody Guthrie songs as well. We got a call one day from a guy called Oliver Postgate who had invented Bagpuss. It was a TV series for children, and there were animations, puppetry, animated puppets, and they asked myself and Sandra Kerr to write the songs and music for the series, which we did. But there were a lot of the stories were actually based on folklore and sort of Greek mythology and that kind of thing. So it was kind of the stories were very deep, but entertaining for kids, and so we had to write songs.
Now Fido's house was inside out, clever old Uncle Fido. The out was in, the in was out, it suited Uncle Fido. One wall kitchen, one wall parlour, one wall was the bedroom. He laid his head on his quilted bed, sleepy Uncle Fido.
What a pretty story. What a delightful story.
It's still alive, basically, because it's been repeated ever since the last 40 years. I think about 10 years ago, it was voted in some poll or another, I think it might have been the Times in England, voted it the best children's TV programme of all time. So we were very proud of that series, and it's still going, because we made a new album of the original songs last year. Traditional Irish music in London was, there was lots of it, because there were lots of pubs in the Camden Town area, Finsbury Park, Cricklewood, all over different parts of London where the Irish had settled. There was great music. I mean, I got to know people like Bobby Casey, the great fiddle player from County Clare, Raymond Rowland, Roger Sherlock, Tom McCarthy. At that time, people used to say there was more Irish music in London than there was in Ireland, because so many people had emigrated there from the 1950s and onwards, and set up these great sessions in pubs. And so I just fell in love with it, really. Well, here's a song that I've been singing for a long time, many years. I learned it from the singing of a fine singer from Moulton Malbay called Tom Lennon, and he has loads of great songs. This one, I think, is one of them. It's a story of the farmer Michael Hayes. Fox that never was before on tramp. My rent and rates and taxes I was willing for to pay. I made my den find good land between Tipperary and Loughlong, where my forefathers lived and died 1,000 years or so. Then of late I was betrayed by one who was a fool, I know. He told me I should leave the place and show me face no more. As soon as he evicted me, I thought it time that I should flee. So late one night I took his life and left him my in-law. Then later on, another friend of mine, Nigel Williams, who was at BBC, worked for the BBC, he was making documentary films, and he asked me to be involved in making a film in County Galway. So we brought a film crew over from the BBC and shot a film in Strand with the Kane sisters. And that's where I met Dolores. And that was it. I mean, I'd heard her singing before I'd actually met her. I'd heard recordings of her singing. We just hit it off, and we travelled around Ireland a bit after we'd made this film. Dolores came to London, and we lived together. And we started to do folk clubs together as a a duo, and so it was. We also started to do gigs outside. I mean, we had tours not in America, in Europe, in Holland, some in France, Germany. Germany was an amazing circuit at the time because there was so much Irish music and musicians going to Germany. We used to go there maybe twice, 3 times a year on different tours. The Kane sisters were Dolores Kane's aunts. They always sang together, and they always sang in unison, and they had great traditional songs. And got to know them very well. And in fact, when myself and Dolores lived in London, they came over on a few occasions, and we actually arranged some gigs for them. And they came over, and the Sense of Ireland went on for a month in London, and it was hugely successful. And that with hundreds of Irish musicians and singers came over from Ireland. And it was a success at a time when there was a lot of anti-Irish feeling in London because of the Troubles and all the rest of it. But it ploughed its way all through that and did a fantastic job in promoting Irish traditional music and singing, and Irish culture in general in London. When we moved back to live in Ireland, myself and Dolores were touring quite a lot. She was part of the setup with the Dana with Mary. They asked me as a guest to go back into Ireland and do some gigs with them, which I did. I did a couple of tours. We did one we went to Hong Kong twice. We went to Beijing. We went to Canada, and I did one tour with them in the UK. I mean, it was very enjoyable in many ways. I mean, some of the tours I really remember with great fondness, and touring on the road is tiring. I mean, we did one long tour in America, which was about 5 months, and it was, you're almost emigrated. You've almost gone to live somewhere else. I mean, at one stage, I hooked up with Charlie Harris and Brendan Larracy. We had a band called Faulkner, Harris and Larracy. Anyway, we did traditional music. We toured. We did quite a lot of tours, actually. We toured in Denmark, Sweden, Italy, Germany, Switzerland. We had a great time. I really enjoyed that because they're such easy guys to get along with, and I liked the music. And it was a mixture of traditional music and songs, and they were great, very good at accompanying the songs. Yeah, Andy, in my opinion, is one of the outstanding musicians because he's, in terms of accompaniment, he can sing the song and play a counter melody on his instrument at the same time. And the principle that I kind of learned from him, I think, is that basically you take the tune of the song, and the notes are going in a certain direction and so on and so on, and each part of that segment of that tune, you try and think of a harmony that you can play on your instrument, guitar, in my case, guitar or bouzouki, and you try and follow the line of the song with the harmony line on the instrument. So you're playing a counter melody, and you're playing a counter melody all the time while that song is being sung. And that, to me, that's then you've got a choice of what kind of harmony it's going to be. It's going to be you know, a fifth or a fourth harmony or a third harmony. It depends on what kind of colour you want to make it, you know, because the harmony always creates colour.
I think John was a very fine musician. I'm thinking of him mainly as a guitar player and a bouzouki player, but of course he plays the fiddle as well. I loved it. Especially the album he made, I think it's called Kind Providence. And it was probably neither today nor yesterday, but that epitomized for me the kind of songs that he was good at and that I really liked. I really liked his playing and his singing and his company.
So I met Annie in 1991, and there was a concert in, I think it's in the Galway Bay Hotel, a benefit concert for Kurdish refugees, I think it was, and at the time, and there was a benefit, loads of people were playing it, and I went along and did it, and Annie was at the gig, and we got talking afterwards, and that was it. It was like purely by chance that we met, really, and we've been together ever since. We moved to Kinvara in 95. I'd been coming to Kinvara for a long time before that, on and off, for sessions. There used to be great sessions in Flatley's, actually, which was the main place, and then later on in Winkles, and then in Tully's. There were great sessions, and I'd been coming and meeting people like Jackie Daly, the Maguires, and a lot of other musicians who used to haunt these environs, and it always struck me that if I was going to try and settle somewhere out of Galway city, which we were living at the time, myself and Annie, Kinvara would be a nice place to be. So we started looking around for places in this area, and eventually found this house, and moved here in 95. I think I'd always wanted to come here because I just found that Kinvara and the area had some kind of magic about it, which I'm not the only one, because a lot of other people have done exactly the same thing. You know, really, it's great. I love it here. Well, I started writing songs, but I really hadn't taken it up seriously until probably, I think, the 1980s. I was listening to a lot, funnily enough, listened to a lot of country music at the time, and thinking, I could write that stuff, you know. And then I wrote a whole bunch of songs which would be regarded as country songs or in that idiom, and I sent them all off to famous people in Nashville, and I found out afterwards that you don't do that, because nobody ever listens to anything at all. Somebody told me, he said, don't try and write country songs, just try and write songs. You don't try and write country songs or rock and roll songs, you just write songs. So that's what I started doing. So it takes me time to write songs. But I've been trying to write an album for the last 10 years or so, which I've now done, and it's recorded. But I think probably what spurred me on a lot was way back when I suddenly, all of a sudden, had this idea. I remembered the day, and I remember where I was when Nelson Mandela was put in prison. So I thought, I'm going to write a song about Nelson Mandela. So I just sort of, I mean, within an hour I had the song written, Lion in the Cage. I didn't record it or anything like that. But when Dolores came to make an album, she was looking for songs, and I said, well, why don't you try that one? Which she did, and it was recorded, and Donald Lunny produced the album and did a fantastic job of producing the song, which went to #1 in the Irish charts. was released, it was banned in South Africa, I'm happy to say, and he told me that they bootlegged a version of it and they were singing it on the streets of the townships. Got a message from WA South Africa, which is Warner Brothers South Africa, and they wanted to release it in South Africa, but they needed to change some of the lyrics because they said it was they couldn't handle it. So they will get them to send me a copy of the changed lyrics, and we'll see. You know, it's a complete joke. I mean, it was a completely different song. They'd taken everything out that meant anything at all, and so I refused. They said, "No, get it." So they didn't get it. Well, coming from a very kind of lefty radical background as I do from way back, with all kind of people of my ilk, the Spanish Civil War represents one of the world's greatest tragedies of all time. If you read anything about the history of the Spanish Civil War, the Republicans could have won that war because they were actually far better equipped in the early days of the war. So I became interested in that, funnily enough, through songs. And the song that influenced me most, I think, was a Ewan MacColl song called Jamie Foyers. It's an old song that was adapted by Ewan MacColl to the conditions of the time of the Spanish Civil War. And it's about a Scottish guy from the shipyards in Glasgow who goes off to fight in Spain on the side of the Republic and is killed in battle. And it's based on a much, much older song with the same story and the same name of Jamie Foyers. And it's the song that influenced me, and it influenced my desire to go and have a look in Spain at some of the sites of the battlefields because they're mentioned in the song. Like Gandiza, which is in or El Chiti, which is in the Aragon area, and Gandiza, which is in Catalonia. And I was going to go and see these places, but anyway, the song, I'll sing a couple of verses of the song. Far distant, lies Foyers the brave. No tombstone memorial shall hallow his grave. His bones they lie scattered on the rude soil of Spain. For young Jamie Foyers in battle was slain. He came frae the shipyard that stands on the Clyde. His hammer is silent, his tools laid aside. To the wide broad river young Foyers is gane, to fight by the side of the people of Spain.
Well, the last time I saw him was, I think, probably 2018, and he rang me up. I think he was on the road. He was traveling up from Galway to Dublin, and he said, Andy, I wanted to come. I've read about this International Brigade concert that's happening at the Workers' Club in Dublin, and I'm on my way to it. Do you think I'll be able to sing a song? And I said, well, I'm sure you will, John. Yes, it's a very loose concert. Loosely arranged concert, and he got up and he sang Jamie Foyers, which more or less brought the house down. And he with his one song, I think he just sang the one song, and took the night by storm.
I think my style of singing, I don't know how unique it is. I think I was influenced by a number of different influences. I mean, I would have been influenced in the early days by, the American thing with Woody Guthrie and some of the blues singers like Big Bill Broonzy and people like that. I mean, not that I would sing in that style, but that influenced the way I was thinking about the whole thing. Certainly American music, old-timey music and songs. I was hugely influenced by the songs of Woody Guthrie from the 1930s and the Dust Bowl era and all that. But I think later on I was influenced certainly by Ewan MacColl. Tried to find a voice of my own that would but I think really what prompts a style is the songs themselves. The songs themselves need to be sung in a certain style. If I'm singing Irish songs, I try and sort of hear the way people like Joe Heaney might have decorated a certain phrase, or but not exclusively like that. I mean, I'm trying to copy other people.
To me, John is one of the pioneers of modern British and Irish folk music. Along with his peers, people like Andy Irvine, Ewan MacColl, Johnny Moynihan, they took the tradition and blew the dust off it and made it speak to us again. And now younger acts like Ye Vagabonds, Lancome, Lisa O'Neill, they've picked up the torch from them. John is a great interpreter of folk song, but he's also a great songwriter in his own right. I'm delighted to be working on his new record at the moment, which is an album of original songs. I've always enjoyed playing with John. We do some gigs together as Passage West with Tony Trundle, where we sing songs with the nautical theme. I have some great musical memories with John as well in sessions in Kinvara over the years. Back in the 90s with Jackie Daly and Tully's and Winkles and the Old Plaid Shawl, and some magical nights in Greens with John Prine.
John Faulkner is extraordinarily good musician. He's instrumentally really great. He gets into that bouzouki or into that guitar. He jams right into it. All of which I love. There's an intensity and a passion about how he plays. And I noticed more recently too, just what a powerful voice John has got. He's got this really strong voice, it's understated if you like, but if you're away from it for a while, then you hear it again, and think, oh God, that man can sing. And he can. And if you ally that voice with a beautiful sense of harmony and this encyclopedic knowledge of songs. I mean, he has just a catalogue of songs in his head that I envy his ability to remember all these songs. I don't have any kind of ability like that. Well, Greens is just it's off this planet. Greens is wonderful. I love Mary. I love the shop. We had probably the most important session for me was one we did when one afternoon John Prine came up to John and I and said, hey, should we do a session in Greens tonight? Which is, as you know, how it happened. And it was myself, John, Prine, and Declan O'Rourke. All of them, three great voices, great singers, great writers. So I felt kind of lucky to be in that sort of company, and it was a wonderful session.
No, I think I just had been really lucky with having so many musical friends and associates, being in an area like this that you couldn't fail to I did with regular sessions in places like Sexton's and Tully's and places like that. I've been playing on a regular basis with Mary Staunton and Jerry Mulvihill and Colin McCarthy, the accordion player from County Clare who lives in Oranmore. And over the years, just enjoyed playing playing music with guys from down in Frankie Gavin and people like that, and Alec Finn. This is a song I wrote, I think, probably about 10 years ago. I can't really remember. I think it's about 10 years ago, and it's a love song. And simple as that, really. It's just a love song with a slightly different angle, but it's called Save Me a Place in Your Heart. And it goes something like this. When the skies are grey, good times are over, fortune has drawn us apart. But I'm only a memory on a long summer's evening. Save me a place in your heart. When the years have rolled by on the wings of an eagle that's chasing a lost shooting star, when time brings you down to the wide rolling river, save me a place in your heart. Yeah, Joseph was born in 1987, and he was really delighted to welcome our daughter Nell when she was born in 2007. When the trees have grown tall and the long shadows fall, when the sun's going down on this cold ancient ground, when time brings you down to the wide rolling river, save me a place in your heart. Yeah, I'm working on the album still. I mean, well, I say very limited work at the moment. We're doing some mixing when we can, and Paul is mixing some of this. Paul Mulligan, that is mixing some of the stuff at home on his laptop. He has all the tracks fed into that, and I'm writing some memoirs, basically. Trying to, as somebody said to me, you better write them down soon before you forget them all. You know, at my age, that's quite possible.